Welcome back to the Love Tribe podcast. If you've listened to this podcast before, you'll know that most of my stories don't start in perfect moments. Today I want to share a story that shaped me in ways that nothing ever has. It's not a love story between two people. It's the story of becoming a mother before I felt ready, and the sacred bond that formed the moment I realised I wasn't alone. The moment I knew he had already chosen me. This episode is for anyone who's ever walked a path alone, who's ever faced the unknown with nothing but their heart and a whisper of trust, and who's discovered that love, the real kind, can still find you there. I'm Madonna, and this is the Love Tribe podcast. Thank you for being here with me. This is the story of the bond that built me, the love that arrived before I was ready, and made me everything I was meant to become. He wasn't someone I'd known for long. It was new and nothing serious. We were just getting to know each other. There was no great love story between us, but in a way that made what happened next even more unexpected. I had a feeling something was different. Just a quiet knowing in my body, a subtle shift I couldn't ignore. So I went to the doctor. The pregnancy test was negative, and she smiled as she told me to go home and celebrate. "You're probably not pregnant," she said, "but let's do a blood test just to be sure." So I moved on with my day, not thinking much of it, until the phone rang 2 days later. It was Valentine's Day 1997, and just like that, everything changed. I was 20 years old and I was pregnant. And while the world might expect panic or regret or shame, what I felt was something else entirely. A rush of calm, a swell of emotion, excitement, anticipation, and the biggest ball of love in my chest I'd ever experienced. I know it might sound strange, but it was like I already knew him. I could feel his presence, his personality, his soul, and in that moment I felt sure of who I was and what I was here to do. I wasn't afraid, I was already in love. I had always believed in something greater. I'd always felt guided, but something about carrying this child moved me into deeper alignment with who I was meant to be. It wasn't a switch that flipped. It was more like a quiet voice rising inside me, a certainty I had never known before. And at the same time that I was stepping into that clarity, everything else was falling apart. When I first found out I was pregnant, I asked his father for space. I told him I needed time to focus on this pregnancy, on becoming a mother before I could navigate a relationship. I believed we had time to figure things out later if it was meant to be. But he didn't see it that way. Instead of meeting that moment with maturity or compassion, he gave me an ultimatum. "If I can't have you, I don't want this baby." And just like that, the door closed. It was confronting, but also clarifying, because I realized then and there that I was on my own. And strangely, there was power in that. What was growing inside me wasn't just a baby, it was my future, my family, my new beginning. And I don't speak this next part often because I'm always mindful of who I say it to. I truly believe a child deserves both parents in their life, but both these people need to arrive present, open and willing to put the child first. In this case, I was spared from chasing shadows, spared from the slow ache of wishing more for my child, because I knew from the beginning that this child was being protected. What I don't often talk about is the quiet relief. There was no custody battle, no confusion, no one turning my child against me, no dysfunction to untangle for the sake of appearances. I was the only one making decisions, the only one my son would look to, and while that meant I carried everything, it also meant I had autonomy, I had clarity, and I had peace. Still, I tried to leave the door open. For the first few years I encouraged contact, tried to give him chances to show up. His parents reached out a few times after Isaiah was born, cards, messages, small gestures that felt like an opening. But eventually that stopped too. Years later, he admitted something I hadn't known. He told me his parents used to often ask about their grandchild, and to avoid the questions, to protect himself, he told them I wouldn't allow contact. And after that, of course, I stopped asking, because it became clear this child wasn't unwanted. He was simply too powerful a soul to be born into a fractured home. I was chosen to carry him, chosen to raise him, to protect him, to be both mother and father, guide and grounding point, safety net and springboard. And I was ready. I didn't know what lay ahead. I just knew I would love him through all of it. And from the very beginning, I did. There's a moment that every mother remembers, the first time you hold your child and realise that life will never be the same. But for me, it wasn't just a moment, it was a becoming. I didn't feel overwhelmed by the responsibility, I felt awakened by it. This wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was the life I'd been chosen for, and somehow it fit. He was a mirror, a guide, tiny but already wise. He was always bright, full of light, a happy baby who cried like any other, but who usually woke up with a smile, his whole little face lighting up the moment I walked into the room. And from the very beginning, it was just the two of us. There was no one else getting up for night feeds, no one else learning his cues or calming his cries. I was it, his comfort, his routine, his safe place. And he became mine too. He was the reason I woke up in the morning and the reason I kept going when everything felt heavy. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And in those early days, our bond was everything. Still, motherhood wasn't always soft. Many nights after story time and in the quiet just before sleep, he'd start to cry. "Where is my dad?" he'd ask. "Why can't I talk to him? Can I meet him one day?" And I'd sit there on the edge of his bed, offering the only story I knew how to give at the time. "Your dad is sick, sweetheart. He can't be here right now, but he loves you. And I love him for giving me you." I told him that story for years, repeating it over and over with gentleness, not because it was true, but because I thought it might protect his little heart. Because his father did have a chronic illness. He had been in and out of hospital with Crohn's disease since he was a teenager. But I also knew that being unwell didn't mean he couldn't be a father. He just didn't want to be. Eventually I reached a point where I couldn't carry it anymore. He was older, he was ready, and more than anything, I was ready. He deserved the truth, we both did, and his father no longer deserved my silence. So one night I told him, gently, honestly. I told him that yes, his dad had been sick, but he could have chosen to be in his life and he didn't. I explained that not everyone is meant to be a parent, that it wasn't his fault, that God had given him a strong mum who knew how to kick a soccer ball and fix things and love him so fiercely that he would always be okay. I told him that he could find his father later if he wanted to. And over the years, when I asked gently if he felt ready, he always said no. Eventually he decided for himself he didn't have a father, because blood doesn't define worth. And now he's the same age his father was when he walked away. And I know with everything in me that my son would never make the same choice. Isaiah has had to carry more than most people know. He's wise, logical, loving, sensitive. He carries the world on his shoulders and still manages to show up with kindness and clarity. And in a way, I often say he raised me. He taught me what it means to love without condition, to keep showing up, to stay soft even when it feels hard. He's a Libra, just like my dad. Fair, balanced, emotionally intelligent. While I've always had both feet in the future, charging forward like an Aquarius on the edge of something new, he's been in the calm in the storm, my anchor, my mirror, my teacher. He also had to grow up quickly. I couldn't shield him from the realities of life like other families might. We were a unit, a team. It was us against the world. And no one really understood our bond the way we did. I remember one day he told me so matter-of-factly, "Mum, you're in the top 5 mums in the world." And I laughed and I said, "Top 5? Why not number 1? And he explained in true Isaiah style, thoughtful, fair, and completely logical. "Well, there's Mother Teresa and then there's my aunties because I really love my cousins, but you're definitely top 5. That's my boy, a huge heart and a clear discerning mind, always considering others. I raised him not to care what others think of him, only how his actions affect the people around him. And he lived that. He was everyone's friend at school. Kind, funny, respectful. The kind of kid who raised his hand for the silly roles in the school plays just to make people laugh. The male teachers especially loved him. He bonded with them deeply. Maybe because he didn't have a father figure at home. maybe just because he was lovable. And while our relationship is one of the greatest gifts of my life, he hasn't had an easy path. The last 10 years have been especially hard with our wider family fractured, and he lost his connection with his cousins, the ones who felt like siblings. It has broken his heart, but through it all, our bond remains unbreakable, rooted in truth, built on presence and patience and deep, real love. And if I had to do it all over again, there's no doubt that I would, because I wasn't just raising him, he was raising me too. The bond I share with my son has taught me everything I know about love: devotion, patience, protection, presence. Not the kind of love that demands to be earned, but the kind that deepens through consistency, through truth, through showing up even on the hard days. For a long time, I thought that might be the only great love story I ever lived. And I was okay with that, because some people go a lifetime without even one, and I had been blessed with the deepest love I'd ever known. But then something shifted. Last year, a connection entered my life that cracked my heart open again, gently, unexpectedly, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the possibility of romantic love return. But this time I wasn't looking for it to save me. I already knew what real love felt like. And now I realize something I hadn't seen clearly before. Romantic love, when it's right, doesn't look all that different from the love I've spent a lifetime building. It needs the same foundation: trust, presence, and truth, a shared willingness to stay. And that's the path I'm walking now, learning how to receive love again, how to remain open without losing myself, how to trust divine timing even when I don't know the outcome. I don't know what the next chapter will look like, but I know how it will feel. It won't ask me to shrink or hide. It won't make me question my worth. It won't ask me to choose between the parts of myself I hold sacred. It will meet me with the same honesty I've spent a lifetime practicing. It will see me in the same way I see myself, worthy, whole, and ready. Because I didn't miss out. I prepared, I healed, I remembered who I was. And now I'm ready, not to be completed, but to be met. You're listening to the Love Tribe podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and the kind of love that changes everything. I was guided on this journey, not for praise or performance, but to open the path to unconditional love. The kind of love that holds you, that walks beside you, that proves again and again that love wins. That by trusting something greater, love meets us here, not to complete us, but to walk with us. And when it arrives, it won't just feel like love, it will feel like a promise kept. Looking back now, I see something I couldn't fully understand when I was in it. By becoming a mother on my own terms and building a life of independence, creativity, and purpose, I was living the kind of freedom that most of the women in my family never got to experience. The women in my family didn't have choices. They weren't encouraged to follow dreams or build businesses or raise children on their own without shame. They stayed because they had to. They made do. They survived inside roles they didn't always choose. And when they did dream, it was often in silence. And without truly realizing it, I broke that pattern. I didn't just raise a child, I raised myself out of that cycle. Not without struggle and not without sacrifice, but with something they were never given: autonomy, creativity, and choice. I created businesses on my own terms. I had a skincare brand that I made by hand, a cafe built with love and community at its centre, and now a Pilates studio that holds space for healing, strength, and connection. Each one was more than a job. It was an act of reclamation, a declaration that I didn't need to be chosen by anyone to create a beautiful, meaningful life, that I could provide, express, and expand without asking permission. And Isaiah was part of all of it. He helped wherever he could, making coffees, packing orders, wiping cafe tables, listening to my ideas, and offering encouragement when things felt heavy. He didn't just watch me build my dreams, he built them with me. We were a team. And while single motherhood is often painted in struggle, What it gave me was a kind of sacred freedom. Freedom to dream, freedom to decide, freedom to become. There was no shared bank accounts, no one to consult, no one to rely on or wait for, which meant every decision came with risk, but also with power. I shaped our days, our space, our life, and I carried the consequences with pride. That kind of freedom can feel invisible while you're living it, because you're too busy surviving. But now with some distance, I can see it for what it was. And I also see the quiet influences that helped me get here. My dad in particular was a steady, quiet champion of my independence. He never once limited me because I was a girl. We all worked equally on the farm growing up. I was the youngest and the smallest, but he still gave me jobs of strength and responsibility. He let me live up to my potential. He never spoke about gender roles. That was more my mum's territory. She'd often say my brother didn't need to clean or cook because he was a boy. He had outside jobs and sisters to handle the rest. But my dad never saw it that way. He treated us with equal expectations and quiet belief. I'll never forget when he gave me the money he'd put aside for my wedding and told me to use it for my business instead. He said he'd help the others with weddings and that he knew that building something of my own was what I truly wanted. He knew me, and in that moment he honoured my dream without needing me to follow a traditional path to deserve it. That kind of belief stays with you. And I know now that freedom wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who came before me and every woman who will come after. Because when one woman breaks a pattern, she opens a door. And finally, there's something I haven't spoken about much, partly because it's still unfolding and partly because I'm still holding it close to my chest. But I've come to realise that my journey as a mother may not be over. I want another child, not because there's something missing, not because I need to fix or fill a space, but because for the first time, I feel ready to share that journey with someone by my side. It's hard to admit, because there's fear in wanting something that isn't entirely in your hands, and a kind of courage in speaking that desire aloud when you know it might be misunderstood. It's taken me years to arrive at this clarity. I've already proven that I can do it on my own. I've walked that road with love and courage. But this time I want something different. Not because I'm not capable of doing it alone, but because I deserve to be held through it. I want presence. I want partnership. It feels like the other side of a life I've already lived. A second beginning. Not to do it better, but to do it differently. Not alone, but together. The first person I told wasn't a friend or even my doctor. It was Isaiah. Over the years, he's quietly shared that he'd love a sibling. It just never eventuated, and to be honest, I thought it never would. But before I could fully embrace this desire, I had to honour his feelings. Because for a long time it's been just us, and part of me worried that he might feel replaced or left behind, or that I was giving this imagined child something he never got, a complete family unit. And there's guilt in that. There's sadness for the little boy who used to cry for his dad. But when I told him, he didn't hesitate. He smiled. He was genuinely excited by the idea. Maybe because he's always known how much love we still have to give. Maybe because he assumed, like I once did, that it might never happen. And maybe it won't. A lot will need to align. It will take its own kind of miracle. A miracle of timing, of connection, of the right love arriving at the right moment. It's not something I'll do alone. It's something I'm holding with open hands and quiet faith. I believe in divine timing. I believe in divine orchestration. And if that door opens, if that child chooses me, they won't just be a second baby. They'll be a second beginning. My relationship with my son is the greatest achievement of my life. But it's also the most important responsibility I carry, because relationships don't just exist, they're built and rebuilt day after day. As parents, we shape that relationship long before our children have a voice. We decide the tone, we set the rhythm, we create the emotional climate they'll grow up inside. That's something I think about often, because Isaiah doesn't owe me love or closeness or loyalty. He chooses to be in a relationship with me every single day, and I don't take that for granted. We laugh together, we disagree sometimes, we learn from each other. But the thing I'm the proudest of is that he trusts me. He tells me the truth, even when it's hard, because I've shown him that love doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. It leans in, it listens, it grows. I've worked hard to break the cycle of emotional silence in our family, to make sure that my son knows that he's not here to protect my feelings. He's here to live his truth. And it's my job to keep showing up in a way that earns his trust again and again. Because love is not just a feeling, it's a practice, a sacred daily choice. And that's the truth behind the words I first read so long ago, the words of Kahil Gibran. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. I don't own my son. I was chosen to guide him, to love him fiercely without possession, to walk beside him, not in front, and to remember always that love, in its truest form, sets us free. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Love Tribe podcast. If something in this episode stirred something in you and you feel called to share your own story, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me directly at hello@wearethelovetribe.com or connect with our beautiful community on Instagram at wearethelovetribe. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, trust your journey, and don't forget that I love you.